Hey everyone, God bless you. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I've prepared a reflection for you today that I'm entitling Cheating Death? Cheating Death. This week I watched a fascinating interview between Tucker Carlson and the man he was interviewing, a man named Brian Johnson of Project Blueprint. Brian Johnson is a fascinating man, young, I think he's in his mid-40s, talented entrepreneur who's made a ton of money in tech and now is completely focused upon cheating death, creating through diet, exercise, and proper sleep and other initiatives. The slowing of aging. He's claiming that he has made serious progress in this field, and he wants everyone to be able to partake of that. And so now he's kind of, codified his plan and is mass producing it in supplements and other things that you can receive. The interview is a fascinating interview. Tucker did a fantastic job. Mr. Johnson is obviously a very, very smart man. He's also apparently a very pleasant man. His worldview is atrocious. This quest, though, that is become so common in the falling West, the West that is post-Christian, post-religious, in which so many of our elite are just abysmally ignorant in the sphere of religion and philosophy. And they're so, what shall I say, STEM created. I've been following a scientist, a very accomplished biologist named Aubrey de Grey. You may have heard me speak of him in some reflections in the past. This is a famous text that he wrote called Ending Aging, the Rejuvenation Breakthroughs That Could Reverse Human Aging in Our Lifetime. He's the chair of the Methuselah Foundation. The book, I think, was published in 2007. It's a fascinating depiction of Aubrey Dr. de Grey's efforts to retard cellular degeneration and to stop the breaking down of cells with the ultimate quest to end aging. Sadly, Dr. de Grey has as warped worldview as does Brian Johnson. When Dr. Aubrey de Grey was asked why he cares, why he's so focused on cheating death and ending the process of degeneration, he said, this is his answer, so many women, so little time. Oh, I see. So you want to live 900 years because that's good. And the reason it's good is so that you can slake your lust on women and do it for 900 years. Really inspiring worldviews here? No, of course not. Brian Johnson of Project Blueprint is not much better. Now, his actual project itself, the project which starts with him becoming the most measured man in the world, he is being constantly monitored over a period of years, everything he ate, all the ways that he slept, and all the ways that he exercised. He measured with great care. He used his fortune to do this, and the results and the information that has come out of that is very interesting, without question. He's really honed what are the best foods to retard death and decay in the body, what is the best way and length of time to sleep, how is the best way to exercise with a combination of stretching, cardiovascular exercises, and weights. And he is sharing that with people. And we do, in fact, have a massive health epidemic in the West, particularly in America, when so much of our food is just awful and processed and full of terrible things that are not helping us. We have very bad health outcomes compared to other wealthy countries in the world. So he is making a very important contribution there. He's spending millions of dollars on his own health. And doing experimental things like plasma injections and these kinds of things, which he thinks are very helpful. He eats 3 meals a day. He's trying to present his way of life as sustainable and reasonable. I laughed heartily when Tucker asked him, well, do you have like a normal life? And he goes, oh, yes, I eat 3 meals a day. He didn't say until later that he eats the same 3 meals a day. Broccoli, cauliflower, ginger, and black lentils every breakfast of every day of his entire life. Sorry, husbands, if you follow his project so that you can live longer, no more special meals for you. Sorry, wives who love to delight your husbands with their favorite meal on special days. There's not going to be any more patriarch Isaac and Rebecca making Isaac's great meal so in order to trick him so that Jacob could win the blessing. No. The same thing every day for every meal. Yes, you have one for breakfast, another kind for lunch, and another for dinner. In its proper place and proportion, the information that Brian Johnson is providing the world can be extremely helpful within reason. It's not that I'd like to speak about. It's the grief, the sadness of his extremely compromised worldview. His worldview that's driving this is just really awful. He was raised a Mormon. He has since become, for all intents and purposes, a practical atheist, does not believe in God. In fact, Tucker did a great job of constantly exposing to Brian the inconsistencies in his worldview that an atheist simply can't maintain well. And he had a hard time understanding Tucker's point. Tucker asked him, do you believe in God? And he said, no. And he said, in fact, something much more offensive. He said, well, it would be helpful if there was some evidence. Of course, if you have a worldview, if you have fundamental commitments that exclude the invisible, and nothing can be affirmed as true except what can be measured scientifically, well, then no evidence that normal people throughout the history of the human race would consider obvious and demonstrable of the existence of the unseen world, of God, of angels and demons, will be allowed to be even considered if you have those principles up front, as Mr. Johnson does. Tucker labored long and hard many times throughout the interview to expose his limited worldview and the fact that he was, in his quest to eliminate death, there was no evidence that he could succeed. His optimism, Tucker was suggesting, is radically misplaced because if you believe in evidence, so many have tried this throughout the history of the human race. As Tucker said, the evidence would lead you to believe that you yourself are going to die a bad death. You're going to be crushed by death. He also asked him if he ever feared, Tucker asked Brian if he ever feared that this flippant attitude towards death, towards life, this rejection of God, if he was ever afraid that the Lord may judge him.
I just wonder if part of you, maybe deep inside, fears that when you start to say things like, we can defeat death, that you won't be smote down by the God of the universe. Do you worry about that?
Not in the least bit. Never crossed my mind.
You're either very brave or very foolish.
Never crossed my mind.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you say, I can defeat death, aren't you saying I'm God?
The story we've told is that God created us, and the actual story may be that we are going to create God.
So we have yet again a really fine, clear representative of the ascendant aristocracy of the godless West, these very wealthy tech titans who have no respect for the vast majority of people who believe in God and the soul and the afterlife. No, they despise us. They despise us. They know best, and they're using their influence to rule and to take us to new heights which they can't substantiate as being worth anything in their own worldview, which is so limited. In fact, Brian suggested that in the past, people have believed that God made them, but that we may soon discover that we make God. We make God. Apart from his reprehensible and very dangerous worldview, He seemed to be a very pleasant person. He was constantly trying to convince Tucker that they thought the same way and that they're after the same things, even though Mr. Johnson's worldview is bankrupt. The great elephant in the room, of course, is that he never addressed, nor can he in his worldview, address the core problem behind death. One, where did it come from? Two, why is it bad? Why should we labor to escape it? What's the good in that, ultimately? They think that the goal in life, they want to be able to keep their life as it is now. Well, one of the reasons they want to keep their life as it is now is because their life is pretty good from the earthly perspective, right? They're rich. They're not living in extreme poverty, and they're not living in misery, right? Like half the world does. They also think that death, why they're so opposed to death in a worldview in which death must be natural, is unexplained, very much unexplained. For us, we have an answer. Believers have an answer that is clear and set forth by Christ and supported by the great of the world. And that is that death is not natural. Death is the result of sin. As St. Paul writes in his epistle to the Romans, chapter 6, verse 23, the wages of sin is death. So we would suggest to Mr. Johnson and those who share his worldview that to normalize death by their atheistic worldview and then to devote their lives to pushing it back, to avoiding it, not only is that inconsistent, it's no solution at all. And there is only one solution, and there is lots of evidence for it. Death has been conquered one time. And that victory over death has been shared for 2,000 years. It's been conquered once by one man who isn't just a man. He's the Theanthropos, the God-man. Jesus Christ conquered death. He entered into the ring with death and did what no person has ever done. Won that battle. He slew death, and then as the Lord of life rose again from the dead and has offered to share his victory as the vanquisher of death with everyone who believes in him. Everyone who joins themselves to him can share in his victory over death. Mr. Johnson's slogan for his company is "Don't die." Only one can tell you how. Only one. And it's not Mr. Johnson. It's Jesus Christ. May his name be praised forever. Amen.
Patristic Nectar Publications is pleased to present Enduring Love, Laying Christian Foundations for Marriage. Marriage preparation, together with the sacred institution itself, has fallen on hard times in the post-Christian West. It is more important than ever for couples to saturate their hearts and minds with the glorious vision of holy matrimony presented by the Church in holy tradition and lived by countless saints. Here in these pages, couples will find inspired teaching from the Holy Scriptures, the writings of the Holy Fathers, and the service text of the sacrament itself on how to live in a genuinely Christian marriage in which the home becomes a domestic church. Through enduring love, may God inspire the hearts of those preparing to be married and also those already married who would like to deepen their union and render it more pleasing to God. Available now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.